Hello and welcome. We're glad you're viewing our gardening video today. It was created as a companion resource to our Gardening with the MGs, a series of talks presented at local libraries by the Walton County Master Gardener Extension volunteers. This video is the first in our edible gardening series, and it's the Seed Starting Workshop. Let's get digging. First, what will we cover today? Today we will help you with defining some terms in relation to starting seeds in the garden. We'll take a look at seed packets and see what we can learn from them. We'll learn about cool versus warm season plants, indoor versus outdoor seeding techniques, and we'll talk about the steps in starting seeds indoors. Finally, we'll leave you with some resources for further study. The burning question is, why should I start seeds? There are advantages to starting early and starting indoors. It does give you a head start on your garden. It allows you to grow new, or sometimes new to you, and special varieties or cultivars of plants. It gives you more control over what goes into your garden and more control over your harvesting schedule. And some seeds just generally do not prosper by being planted directly into outdoor soil. In many cases, it can save you money. You may be asking yourself, where do I start? Or what seeds do I plant? High quality seed from a reliable dealer or source will be true to cultivar and variety name. It shouldn't contain weed seeds or other contaminants. You can do your research and choose what color or size plant or the growth habit, such as the height or spread, that will do best in your growing conditions. In thinking about your growing conditions, you'll want to concentrate on what type and condition of soil you have where your plants will grow, as well as what zone you live in. We will discuss soil a bit later, so let's start by discovering our zone. The USDA Plant Hardiness Zone Map is the standard by which gardeners determine which plants are most likely to thrive at a location. It's based on average annual minimum winter temperatures. The latest zone revision was done in 2012. So if we go to the USDA Zone Map for the U.S., then find your state, in our case, Georgia. This is what the Plant Hardiness Zone Map looks like. Then you can find your county, which in our case is Walton. And we see that Walton County is indeed in Zone 8A. Plants are typically designated by their life cycles, using the term annuals, biennials, and perennials. Annuals are plants that complete their life cycle in a year or less. There are cool season annuals, and these plants grow and flower more profusely in the comparatively cool weather, some examples of which are pansies and viola in the flower world and broccoli and cabbage in the vegetable world. And there are warm season annuals, which grow and flower well during the summer. Examples of these include zinnia and salvia in the flower world, and tomatoes and peppers in the vegetable world. Biennials, on the other hand, are plants that complete their life cycle in 2 years or growing seasons. In the first year, the plant grows leaves, stems, and roots. It then enters a period of dormancy over the colder months, and during the next spring and summer, the stem of the biennial plant elongates greatly, and then the plant flowers before it dies. You may have heard this process called bolting. Examples of biennials include Queen Anne's lace, celery, lettuce, and carrots. Plants that do not die after flowering but live for 3 years or more are called perennials. Usually the top foliage of perennials die back to the ground each winter and then regrow in successive spring from the existing root system. Hardy perennials can survive the coldest Georgia winters and the hottest summers, while tender perennials will survive average winters and summers in Georgia. Remember, a hardy perennial in Savannah, Georgia may be referred to as an annual in Rome, Georgia. Some examples of perennials include asparagus, strawberries, butterfly weed, hostas, and elephant ears. Let's move on now and learn to read a seed package. One of the handiest resources at your fingertips may be that packet in your hand. We're going to learn to read this seed packet by focusing on one of the most popular tomatoes for home gardeners, a variety called Delicious. Look on the back of the packet. You will see the name of the plant, which in this case is a tomato, its variety, which in this case is Delicious, and its botanical name, and also the name of this plant in Spanish. Moving on down into the description, you learn that this variety of tomato typically produces a large 1-pound fruit with little cracking. You learn that it is an indeterminate variety, which is important information because that means you will need to stake it as it grows, and that it will grow until the first frost in your area. You can check the packet to see when and how to sow indoors, the seed planting depth, the days to germination, and the days to maturity. While some of these terms may seem confusing, we will cover them in the rest of the video. For now, though, let's put this into practical use. Ask yourself, when should I start my tomato seeds in order to have a ripe, delicious tomato for my Independence Day barbecue? If you add the days of germination, which are 7 to 15 in the case of this seed, to the days to maturity, which are 70 to 75, you see that you will need 77 to 90 days to maturity. So, counting backwards from July 4th, you figure that you probably should start the seeds for this tomato in early to mid-April. Let's talk about when it is safe to start our seeds indoors or outdoors. That's often called direct seeding. First, you should know the average last frost date for your area, and that can be found at the National Climatic Data Center by following that link that's shown on the screen. If you followed that, you'd find out that for our area, the average last frost date is the week of April the 1st, while the average first frost date in the fall is the week of October the 31st. Warm season annuals are safe to be planted after the average last date of frost in the spring. Cool season annuals can be planted in the fall, winter, or very early spring. Let's now talk about how to start seeds indoors. When starting your seeds indoors, in addition to the seeds, you will need containers. Please know any container can be used for starting seeds as long as it drains, is deep enough for good root development, and is sanitized prior to use. You may be surprised at that picture to see an egg carton. You will need to put drainage holes in the bottom, and you will also need a watertight tray underneath to collect any excess water or to be able to water from below for larger seeds. You can place the container in a plastic bag or cover it with a lid or some plastic wrap to keep the soil moist. You can even buy seed starting kits. After we've decided on our containers, we need to decide on the seed starting media. The seed starting mix is usually made from a mixture of peat, vermiculite, and perlite that has been sterilized to kill microorganisms. There are many commercial varieties formulated to provide a good balance between water retention and drainage. But let's say that you prefer not to use a commercial variety. We do have a recipe to make your own, showing on the screen now, which includes 4 quarts of shredded sphagnum peat moss, 4 quarts of fine vermiculite, 1 tablespoon of superphosphate, and 2 tablespoons of ground limestone. You will mix this thoroughly and wet it completely. Allow it to drain and do not use it to plant for at least 5 to 6 days. That time period allows the lime to react with the peat moss and create the most favorable environment for your seedlings. The resource for this recipe to make your own is the UGA Extension Publication 1432, known as Starting Plants from Seed for the Home Garden. When you're starting plants from seed in your container, you will want to plant 2 to 3 seeds per cell to ensure that you get one good plant, especially if you're using older seed packages. And take it from someone who has made this mistake. Remember to label while you're planting. You may think you will recall what you planted where, but after a while, the memory will fail. It's just easier to label while planting. Watering is one of the most important considerations when starting seeds indoors. You do want to keep the media moist, but never soggy. Keep them covered until the seedlings emerge. Then, remember to water when the top becomes dry. To do this, you can use a mister, a gentle watering can, or seed wicking fabric that allows you to water from below with lukewarm water until the top of the soil becomes moist. Pour off any excess water. I can't stress enough how important adequate continuous moisture is to the process of seed germination. Germination is the process of the embryo emerging from the seed. It is heavily influenced by 4 environmental factors, including water, which we've already discussed, temperature, light, and oxygen. Seed germination starts when seeds take in the water from the soil or other sources and when the temperature is favorable. Root growth is then triggered, allowing the seed to absorb more water. The seed puts down more roots. It emerges from the media or the ground. And the first pair of leaves that emerge are called the seed leaves or the cotyledons, which will not look the same as future leaves. Finally, a pair of true leaves appear, and that's the beginning of the adult plant. Temperature affects the number of seeds that germinate as well as how fast the seeds germinate. Some seeds have a very specific temperature range for germination, while others will germinate over a broad range of temperatures. Pay attention to seed packets and seed catalogs as they generally list the optimum temperature for germination. Think in terms of a range between 60 and 75 degrees. 70 to 75 degrees when germinating, and then 60 to 65 after sprouting. Use a soil thermometer to monitor soil and media temperature. You can raise the temperature by using moisture-proof heating mats or cables under the flats or the containers. And we can't stress enough to follow manufacturer's instructions on these. but they are not absolutely essential. Flats can be placed in warm spots in the home, such as near a radiator on top of the refrigerator. Then you will move the seedlings to a bright location so they can continue to develop after germination. Check every day to see if you need to remove covering, add water, or adjust the light exposure. Remove any covering when you see the seed leaves appear. These are the cotyledons, and they serve as the food source inside of the seeds. When the true leaves appear, it's time to do a process that most gardeners hate. It's time to thin. This means cutting off any smaller plants to allow for a good strong root structure for the healthier plants that are remaining. This is also time to begin adding a quarter strength liquid fertilizer to the water that is applied to the plants. Water from the bottom to protect fragile plants, as watering from the top can topple the seedlings. Remember, overwatering contributes to the environment that causes fungal problems. As we have said, light is a key environmental factor for successful seed starting. You want to aim for 16 to 18 hours of light each day for the strongest plants. Keeping a grow light or a standard fluorescent light a few inches above the plants provides ideal growing conditions, especially when used in conjunction with a timer. In the illustration here, you see that the light is able to move as the plants grow taller. A sunny windowsill will work, but know that plants may be more leggy and stocky. Germinated seeds actively respire, releasing carbon dioxide and consuming oxygen. As germination proceeds, respiration increases and more oxygen is needed. Therefore, good air circulation is a necessity. New seedlings are especially vulnerable to a disease called damping off. It's a fungus that enters your young seedlings from the soil and causes the seedlings to die, often within hours or days. One of the ways to help prevent damping off disease is to place a fan near the seedlings. This will ensure good air movement and keep the surface of the soil dry. It also prevents hot and cold spots around the new seedlings and strengthens the tiny plants by encouraging good root growth. Plants that are raised in a high humidity sheltered location need to be prepared prior to planting in the drier, harsher conditions of the outside garden. This preparation process is referred to as hardening off. You'll want to start this process on a cloudy day for the best results. Harden off gradually so that the seedlings become accustomed to a strong sunlight, cool nights, wind, and less frequent watering over the next 7 to 10 day period. On a mild day, start with 1 to 3 hours of sun in a sheltered location and be sure to protect seedlings from strong sun, wind, hard rain, and any cool temperatures. Before you plant, please test your soil. This will tell you what amendments and fertilizers you need to add. You can obtain soil test kits from your local county extension office. As most master gardeners across the country will tell you, don't guess, soil test. It's time to make your planting plan. Tall plants on the north side of your garden will prevent them from shading shorter plants. As you can see in this picture, our gardener has planned for trellis crops on the north end of her raised beds. She's also grouped her plants by growing periods, as she placed her onions in the same raised bed with her carrots. She's planted spring crops together so that later crops can be planted after that early crop matures by considering the length of the harvest as well as the time to maturity. Be sure to place any perennial crops, such as asparagus, off to the side of the vegetable garden so that annual tillage will not disturb. Let's recap. Today we have covered the directions for starting seeds. We selected a container, made sure that it was sterile, that it would drain, and that it was deep enough for root growth and development. We added media or seed starting mix that was moistened and sterile. We checked the seed package to ensure that we planted the seeds at the proper depth. Then we sowed the seeds evenly, watered the surface, and placed the container in a warm area. As our seeds began to germinate, we moved the seedlings to a well-lit area such as under grow lights or fluorescent lights. When the cotyledons or seed leaves began to emerge, we removed any covering from our containers. When 2 or 3 true leaves emerged, we knew that we could transplant our seedlings into larger homes such as flats or small pots, keeping the soil evenly moist. We allowed out those plants to grow several more sets of true leaves, and then when they had reached their desired size, we prepared them for planting in the garden by the process known as hardening off. We know to water our transplants well initially and for several weeks after planting. This information comes from the UGA Cooperative Extension Bulletin 1432, Starting Plants from Seed for the Home Gardener. You may want to save seed from your garden plant. These seeds are the result of random pollination and most likely will not produce plants identical to the parents, particularly with hybrid varieties. If you do save seeds for storage, collect only mature seeds from disease-free plants and store them in cool, dry, dark place until they will be used. Here are links to some available online resources for you as you start seeds for your home garden. And if you have questions, please contact us at the information shared on your screen if you're local, or if you've joined us from another part of the country, please contact your local county extension office. Thank you. We hope you've enjoyed this Gardening with the MGs video and that you now feel that you can go and enjoy your own garden. Goodbye.